there's a quiet realization that comes later than most others. Care was already happening, before intention, before reflection, before you decided what kind of person you were. You were already responding. You picked something up before it fell. You adjusted your tone without planning to. You noticed someone was tired and slowed down. You did what needed doing without calling it care. It didn't feel special. That's why it's easy to miss. For a long time, care was framed as something you chose, something you cultivated, something you practiced, something you owed. You were told to be more caring, more compassionate, more present, and so care became effort, something layered on top of living, something you had to remember to do. But if you look closely, care doesn't usually arrive like that. It arrives as response, before thought finishes forming, before values are consulted, before meaning shows up. Care happens first. Thought explains it later. That order matters. Because when thought claims ownership of care, care turns into identity. I am a caring person. I should be more caring. I failed to care. And suddenly, care is heavy, carries judgment, carries expectation, carries pressure. But without that overlay, care is simple, a movement toward what's needed. You don't decide to care when you move your hand away from something hot. You don't decide to care when you catch yourself before falling. You don't decide to care when you adjust your posture to relieve pain. The body responds. Care happens. The same thing happens with other people. You soften your voice without thinking. You pause when someone hesitates. You step in when something is off. You don't think, now I will be caring. You just respond. That response is older than language, older than ethics, older than identity. And when life settles, when self-monitoring loosens, that kind of care becomes more visible. Not because there's more of it, because it's no longer being filtered. For a long time, care may have been entangled with fear. Fear of being selfish, fear of being irresponsible, fear of being seen as uncaring. So care was enforced. You made yourself do things. You overextended. You stayed when you were exhausted. You said yes when your body said no. That wasn't care. That was compliance. And compliance is loud. Comes with resentment, with fatigue, with collapse later on. Care doesn't do that. Care adjusts. It notices capacity. It doesn't push past limits. It responds to what's actually there. In this phase, care becomes quieter. Not because you care less, because care no longer needs to be proven. You don't announce it. You don't track it. You don't evaluate it. You just do what's needed when it's needed. And when it's not needed, you don't force it. That's the difference. You don't help to feel like a good person. You help because help is required. You don't listen to be compassionate. You listen because someone is speaking. You don't show up out of obligation. You show up because you're here. There's no identity attached, no self-image being maintained. Care moves freely, and because it's free, it's more accurate. It doesn't spill everywhere. It doesn't overreach. It doesn't exhaust the system. It goes where it belongs. This is where boundaries stop feeling like rules. They feel like information. You know when to step in. You know when to step back. Not because you decided, because your system registers what's appropriate. You feel when something is yours to carry. You feel when it isn't. That feeling doesn't need explanation. You trust it, and trusting it doesn't make you cold. It makes you sustainable. Care that comes from identity burns out. Care that comes from response continues. This also changes how guilt operates. Guilt used to be the signal that told you whether you cared enough. If you felt guilty, it meant you were still good. If you didn't, something must be wrong. But guilt isn't care. It's a mechanism. And mechanisms don't always point to what's needed. In this phase, guilt loses authority. Not because you rejected it, because it's no longer useful. You don't need guilt to tell you when to respond. You respond anyway. You don't need guilt to keep you engaged. Engagement happens naturally, and when you don't respond, you don't spiral. You recognize capacity. You recognize limits. And that recognition doesn't require justification. This can feel unsettling if your sense of goodness was built on effort. If caring meant strain, if love meant sacrifice, if responsibility meant depletion. Here, care feels different. It doesn't hurt, not because life is easier, because you're no longer adding unnecessary weight. Care doesn't require suffering to be real. That's an old belief. Care requires presence, and presence doesn't hurt. It's just attention where it's needed. This also changes how you experience responsibility. Responsibility becomes situational. You don't carry everything. You carry what's in front of you, then you put it down. No accumulation, no moral residue. You don't replay whether you did enough. You don't catalog your actions. You don't keep score. Care happens, then it's done, and the next moment arrives. This is where people sometimes worry they're becoming indifferent. But indifference is flat. This isn't flat. This is responsive. You still feel concern. You still notice impact. You still adjust. But you don't stay hooked. You don't drag yesterday's care into today. You don't carry future care in advance. You're here. That's enough. Care also becomes less performative. You don't explain your intentions. You don't narrate your kindness. You don't justify your choices. You don't need recognition. Not because you're humble, because there's no one there to be recognized. Care isn't about you anymore. It's about what's happening. That's freeing. Because when care stops being about you, it becomes lighter. It doesn't collapse when misunderstood. It doesn't harden when unacknowledged. It just moves on. You may notice you care differently about different things now. Some things that once consumed you don't pull as strongly. Some things that seem small now get your attention. There's no hierarchy, no ranking of what matters. What's present matters. What isn't doesn't. That's not apathy. That's clarity. And clarity doesn't need explanation. Care happens before thought. That's the core of this episode. Before values, before identity, before meaning. Care is not something you summon. It's something that arises when the system isn't interfering with itself. And now interference has quieted. So care can move, naturally, accurately, without strain. You don't have to remind yourself to be human. You already are. And being human includes care, not as an ideal. As a function, this episode isn't asking you to become more caring. It's pointing out that you never stopped. Care was always there. It just got buried under effort. Now that effort has eased, care shows itself again. Not loudly, not impressively, just in small, precise movements, before thought arrives to explain them. And that's enough.